Hey, good morning, everyone. We've got just a few more folks trickling in, but I think our fearless host, Greg Geibel, is going to go ahead and kick us off this morning. Uh, Over to you, Greg.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Outstanding. Like mic check 1 2 1 2. First and foremost, good morning, New York. I am so excited to be here. Again, your health, our health is our top priority. And I feel that sometimes when we have these like work from home, mandatory, can't leave your house, it's more important than ever to have community. I can't begin to tell you how many people I'm calling just to check in. So I'm super excited to have our first virtual meetup. For those I haven't met, my name is Greg Geibel, and I have the opportunity to build community here at Zendesk. We kind of like to joke around that I started building community here in San Francisco, and Kristen and Pedro were scratching their head because in San Francisco, there was more pizza boxes than people. You know, a year later, we've been able to take the show on the road to New York, and now we're actually taking the show on the road virtually. The idea of virtual excites me because we have the opportunity to help even more people. So our goals haven't changed, even though we're going virtual. If we could go to the next slide, this would be the point where I would ask people to shout out, you know, what are those goals? And it would always make me smile when people shouted them out, you know, learn something, make a new friend, and have some fun. Those goals haven't changed. And I'm excited to be able to facilitate those goals today over the internet through some of the technology that we're going to be piloting today. If we go to the next slide, it was my first time using Zoom. So I wanted to provide some maybe helpful lessons learned from my end. So for video, we're going to recommend that during the breakout sessions, you have it on. It's nice to see a smiling face. During the presentation, it's up to you. During the presentation, we're going to have the mics muted so we can have laser focus on our speakers, and then on during the breakout sessions. The Q&A I'm fired up about. It was amazing to see that the chatter already was beginning. And so hopefully, you know, continue to fire away those questions. You know, and then the other piece of technology is the breakout sessions. You know, typically, if we were in the room, I would force somebody who's sitting by themselves to meet somebody who isn't by themselves. The breakout sessions allow us to build smaller, tighter communities. And we'll be leaving those open for, you know, 10 minutes at the end. If we could go to the next slide, you know, as I mentioned, we started in San Francisco. And I'm incredibly excited about this slide because, you know, we went from 0 to about 1,000 people in our community. The only way that's able to happen is because of this list of amazing customers that we have. And this is posted in, you know, in my office because it makes me smile. You know, in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, man, I sure would love to have my logo up there. I would love it if, you know, we can make that happen. So, you know, feel free to, you know, chatter me, text me, call me, we'll make that work. If we go to the next slide, here are some amazing logos, you know, from New York. If we then can go to the next slide, this slide really makes me smile because it's facilitating our goals of, you know, having a little bit of fun, friendship, and it's just so nice to see so many smiling faces, you know, in a room. So then if we go to our next slide, you know, just for those who aren't aware, you know, Zendesk started as a startup. Three founders around a table, you know, with the goal to build a new generation of the service first CRM. Now we have over 145,000 customers. and Freshly is one of them. If we can then move to our next slide, as I alluded to earlier, we can't build community without amazing, amazing customers who are willing to speak. I truly hit the lottery when I sat next to Colin at one of our VP-sponsored dinners. Through our friendship, he volunteered his team to speak. So a little bit about the format, looking ahead. We're going to start with some prepared content. We're then going to move to some Q&As, and finally, breakout sessions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Colin and Ben and Megan, and I'm just thrilled to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. Just to introduce myself, my name's Megan, and I'm the online engagement manager at Freshly. I've been with Freshly for 3.5 years now, and I'll share a fun fact. My personal favorite Freshly meal is buffalo chicken, and I'm going to expect Ben and Colin to share theirs as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colin. I'm the VP of Customer Experience at Freshly. I've been at Freshly for about 4.5 years now. My fun fact is, aside from the meal I like, my fun fact is I have, I guess my second career is in the theater world. So I'm a produced playwright. So when I'm not otherwise running around doing Freshly stuff and family stuff, that's what I'm doing. My favorite Freshly meal is the Lebanese meatballs, which have been retired for a period of time, unfortunately, and I'm campaigning to bring them back. So that's my sad tale. I'll pass it off to Ben.
Hey everybody, so I'm Ben, Associate Director of Infrastructural Efficiency, if you can handle all that at one time. Been with the company now for over 3 years. My favorite meal has got to be the cod cakes. I think that's been my favorite meal we had. And they may be going off the menu soon, so I'm a little bit sad myself. And like Colin is a playwright, I thought I'd mention a fun fact outside of Freshly too. Prior to Freshly, I worked in the sports entertainment industry. In 2009, I was working with the New York Yankees, and we went ahead and won the World Series. Kind of cool. Who knows if there'll be a season this year, but in 2009, I won the World Series, and so I got a World Series ring, and I brought a little show and tell. There's my 2009 Yankees World Series ring, so that's my fun fact.
I want to start by giving you a overview of Freshly today and our situation. We started over 5 years ago with one kitchen out there in Phoenix, Arizona, because our co-founders are from Arizona. Right now, as you can see, we've expanded quite exponentially since then. We have 3 industrial-sized kitchens in Phoenix, Arizona, and Savage, Maryland, and also Linden, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. We are currently shipping about 900,000+ meals per week to customers across all 48 states, with most of those areas in the states being accessible, except for some rural locations that are a little bit too difficult for us to reach due to carrier restrictions. Aside from our kitchens, we also have a multitude of office locations, with a separate office aside from our kitchens in Phoenix, Arizona, and our headquarters in New York City, and our office in Maryland. And we also have offices abroad in Eastern Europe for engineers, and we also have 2 customer service offices abroad, one in South Africa and one in the Philippines. So we're pretty much splayed out all over the place. We have approximately 1,600 people right now in our organization, and about 200 of those are in the CX world. So lots of growth going on, and lots of changes within the CX team. And I'll pass it off to Ben for more information about that.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, you can see this chart here looking back from really the beginning of 2016 to today, and you kind of get that sense of how we've been able to scale pretty rapidly over that time. I came in just at the end of, 2016, just as we were really starting to grow and set the foundation for what would be kind of a small room of people in New York City, growing to a larger contact center in downtown Phoenix, and now seeing the growth to where it is at almost 200 agents across South Africa and the Philippines. So it's been quite a ride over just a relatively short period of time. as part of that, what do we do with these 200 agents, and is everyone working on frontline contacts? And the answer is no. As we've grown and grown, we've utilized the teams, like the original crew we had in New York City, into more specialized roles, and then even the contact center that was handling frontline for 90+% of their time in Phoenix. As we've brought on the team in the Philippines and South Africa, we've been able to specialize those agents as well. So we have a bunch of these different pods looking into delivery or wellness or retention or training. There's all these different specialized teams that we have based here in the US. What we're going to do today is kind of zoom in on just one of them, and that's what we call our online engagement team. So that we have Megan online with us here today. She's kind of the head honcho of this group, and I wanted to kind of let her introduce her team to you guys.
Awesome, thanks, Ben. Like Ben mentioned, we do have an online engagement team. I'm the manager of that online engagement team, and I have a global team spanning me in New York, along with a team out in Arizona, as well as a team out in the Philippines. So we have a supervisor of online engagement, that would be Kristen, who sits out in our Arizona office. And then I have one team lead, Steven, in Arizona, plus a team lead, Jamie, who sits in the Philippines. And Jamie single-handedly mans our entire Philippines team out there. And global team, of course, means global domination, or I suppose 24/7 coverage. So that means we're handling our social media and online engagement world 24/7, all times. The OE team specifically covers pretty much any contact channel that sits outside of the standard CX areas that you might think of. So things like phone, chat, and email. So when it comes to social, we not only handle any organic content that our marketing team is posting, but plus any social advertising or private messaging that might come through Facebook or Twitter. We also take care of our reputation management, so any review sites like Yelp or the Better Business Bureau, as well as any customer surveys, so things like NPS or meal ratings or different customer touch points, like if they decide to cancel their subscription and we seek out feedback, my team would be the one who goes through those and reaches out and facilitates any gathering of additional information. And we also handle our FAQ section. So not only the creation of articles, but also the auditing of those articles. Online engagement sits at the center of customer service, PR communications, and social media community engagements. And it's a really unique space for CX to own, which is why we wanted to highlight it today. Though it's not unheard of for CX to own, but it does require a great deal of cross-departmental communication, which leads me directly into the next slide, where I'll hand it back off to Ben to talk about creating a CX presence on social. What channels should you be on and why?
Thank you so much. So wanted to give you a little bit of backstory on this. So Megan kind of undersold herself a bit there. For a time, she was kind of the one person doing the role of what you just saw all those faces now doing today. At the beginning, when I started late 2016, we were using Sprout Social. And the idea of managing those contacts was more or less really an afterthought. I mean, we were there, we were present on those channels, but we weren't as caring about how quickly we were responding to, what percentage of contacts we were responding to there. Just a quick like and move on from it was good enough. How we were going to manage that voice, is it different than how we spoke on regular Zendesk tickets? All that was kind of still being worked on. And we had Jashana out in Arizona, who was one of our first original CX hires, who was managing it all on her own in Sprout. And that transitioned more to Megan, and now we have that full team. So just wanted to give you a little bit of backstory on it, and then kind of let Megan dig in a little bit more for you guys. So I'll pass the ball back to her.
Thanks, Ben. So the first thing I want to touch on is why expand into the social space. Some people might think that's more of a marketing space as opposed to a CX one. From our point of view, and should be your point of view, if your customers are talking on social media, you can either choose to be there and engage with them, or you can choose to ignore it. There's really no middle ground there. If your acquisition team is advertising on social, there will definitely be questions. If your marketing team's looking to build their social presence, there will definitely be questions and comments. And your customers are likely reviewing you online, whether you're monitoring the page or not. Customers can create Yelp pages, Better Business Bureau pages, and leave comments for you. And it's definitely a good idea for you to be monitoring those. And if you're not, the social audience will navigate that entire conversation themselves. And you definitely do want your audience to lead it. We want our audience at Freshly to lead the conversation online, but we want to be there to guide them and help facilitate it when we need to have a CX presence. So there are a number of platforms and channels that you can choose to be on. For us, we have a presence on any platform that our marketing team utilizes. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter are the main ones. And from a review site perspective, anywhere where we're accumulating customer reviews right now. So I could list them all, but just a couple would be SiteJabber, Trustpilot, Yelp, and the BBB. And you can also think about what other customer touch points you don't currently have some sort of CX presence on. More often than not, those are going to be online channels that sit outside of phone, chat, email, SMS. And to create this co-working space between CX and marketing, there's going to need to be a really solid working relationship to get it up and running, not just because you need the logins to access those social channels, but you're going to need to figure out together what part of social media CX owns. So for my team, we own the engagement and interaction on any social media and review site, but we do not own the posting or the growth of that audience on social. That is where those KPIs and goals would lie in marketing. And ideally, you'd want to dedicate a person on each channel to be the knowledge and understanding master. So for me, as the online engagement manager, I represent CX. And then we also meet with our social media manager who does own the posting and growth of our audience, plus our paid social manager who owns the ad spend and a CRM contact point for any email campaigns. And that's excellent because it allows us to have a heads up when we're going to increase ad spend or maybe we're decreasing ad spend, as well as get a heads up on when things are going to be posted online. And from our point of view, we're able to provide all this data and information on what customers are saying online, which is extra important for our marketing team as they navigate what and where they should be advertising. And so now I'm going to pass it off to Colin, who can chat a little bit about the successes of CX expanding into the social world.
Yes, thanks, Megan. And Megan really started out addressing some of those. So one of them is just allowing people in the CX world to be on top of changes and developments when it comes to promotions and other initiatives that marketing is working on, which in a lot of organizations, that can be kind of a friction point, making sure there's appropriate communication across those different organizations. So some other successes that we've seen with this. First, I would just highlight again the multiplicity of channels that fit under Megan's team, where she's talking about not only the typical social media channels, but online review sites. And also we use her team to do survey answering. So CSAT surveys, cancellation surveys, meal rating surveys, and all sorts of things. And I think one of the big goals there is, as we've grown as a customer service organization, we're very conscious of the fact that, you know, as you grow, you tend to focus on the main channels that a customer uses to contact you, like email, phone, and chat. And there are other channels that may get short shrift and pushed to the sidelines because they're not seen as being as important. But as Megan pointed out, you really have to take a holistic view of the customer's experience and make sure that you're not delivering different levels of service to people across the different channels. And that's something that we've come to terms with. And one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that we don't just parcel some of the responsibilities for answering surveys or answering customers on review sites across different people in the organization as to what's convenient for us at a given time, but actually have a team of people who can own that, and a team of people who can make sure that those channels are given the same level of importance and dedication that other channels are, so that we can get those learnings from them, like Megan said. So that's definitely been a big win. A second thing that we're really proud of is in cooperation with our marketing team, we were called out on Instagram Business, who gave us a great shout out. And this was about a few months ago, I believe, for as an exemplar of great customer engagement online. And that's noteworthy not only because it's a shout out, which of course we're very grateful for, but also the fact that both the CX side and the marketing side were given a shout out. So it really kind of speaks to how important it is for those two teams to be aligned and on the same page, and how much of the social media world is really a shared space between customer service and between marketing. And that if you do that well, then you can really create a great seamless experience for customers online. Another third thing I would say too, quickly as a big plus, and that Megan was alluding to, is making sure that you have a CX presence in these social channels also helps to break down barriers of communication that, like I was saying, typically exist between CX teams and marketing, and helps CX have a place at the table when you have discussions about tone of voice, and vice versa, to make sure that marketing, when they have their great brand image for the company, is better able to communicate that to CX people, so that information can in turn be communicated to frontline agents, which Megan is responsible for, and which she and her team does a great job of doing. So lots of positives all around.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for all that. I'll just kind of step back in and talk more here. So building social media into the holistic customer experience. Like I mentioned before, we were kind of looking at this as its own separate world, and having social contacts live in one space, and then calls, chats, emails, and Zendesk kind of live in this other space. But potentially those customers are the same, right? So someone who is going on Facebook and talking about, hey, how does this promo work? Or hey, how does your meal situation work? How much do you charge for them? Is then going to come back and contact us later in a chat, a call, an email. And we were looking at those as two separate worlds, and it made sense to kind of bring it under the same umbrella, and kind of see social media contacts just the same as we would any other tickets on calls, chats, emails. So again, I'll open it back to Megan and let her dive in a little bit more.
Thanks, Ben. So like Ben mentioned, definitely social was quite separated from our phone, chat, and email contacts for quite a bit of time. And one of the hurdles that we struggle with when it comes to social is figuring out who that customer is. So people can post quite anonymously on social media because they may or may not be using their real name, or when it comes to a channel like Instagram or Twitter, they may be using a nickname or just a handle. So it can be difficult to compare the messaging between email to Facebook or chat to Instagram. So when we do find out who that person is, whether it's because we recognize the situation that they're speaking to and we know that that's a very particular customer, or perhaps we're able to figure it out based on their name, we want to tag who that person is. And we can do that. We utilize Conversocial for social media today, and we're able to add in their email address and their phone number to their profile within social media. So that way we can connect it, and we connect Conversocial with our main database via API. So that way we can look at all of our customer conversations in one place, and all of the tagging and data around our social media comments. And as well, to be able to facilitate a smooth transition between frontline agents who are handling phone, chat, and email to frontline agents handling social media, you do need to create a very distinct open line of communication between those agents. So we utilize a couple different things, different Slack channels where agents can talk to those who are in the social media team, as well as our frontline agents alert the online engagement team whenever a customer mentions that they're going to share their experience on social media or a review site, negative or positive, which allows us the ability to proactively mitigate an issue if it is a negative situation that somebody had, but also to be in the know when someone shares their experience online. So not only we can figure out who that customer is, but we can also be their biggest champion if they're really enjoying Freshly. And in turn, you're also going to want to create a really distinct open line of communication with other departments. So like I mentioned before, we work with our marketing team, and Colin had mentioned tone of voice, which is a really, really big thing for us. So what we did was we worked with the marketing team to get their brand book, their style guide. We looked at our own department to see our best practices when it came to the customer service tone of voice. And from there, we were able to create style guides, a strategy, and a playbook for our online engagement associates specifically. Since social is not quite the same as CX and you're sort of balancing the marketing tone of voice and the CX tone of voice, it's good to have some best practices, even when it comes to some things that we may not even think of, like emojis and GIFs and slang and joking around. What might be quite common for us to talk to each other about, the brand may have a very particular emoji that they love, and we want our agents to know about it. And when it comes to tracking success for all of this and tracking the success of building social media into the customer experience, there are a number of KPIs that we track that match quite distinctively with our CX one. So I'll actually pass it to Colin to talk about the KPI space.
Yes, thank you again. Yeah, just stepping back, and since we talked a bit about the whole idea of incorporating social media into the customer experience, would care about phone calls, web chats, emails, etc. I think that the data really tells a story there. One big area is that we focused on caring about response times on social media the same way we care about response times in other channels, where we set, as I'm sure many of you do, very stringent KPIs about expectations for our customers, so that we can be ready and available for them as quickly as possible. So rather than having this world where we're focusing on, let's have tight email response times and tight chat response times, and let's make sure we answer phone calls within 10 seconds and so forth, then leave social media over here to have 3 hour, 4 hour response times, we said we need to take social media and incorporate that with our other channels and look at it just as seriously. So here you see the fruits of those efforts over the course of 2019, where we were really able to get social media response time down across all these different channels that Megan mentioned very substantially, where we're more typically looking at 20-minute response times for first responses and average responses across our various channels. And that is in relative alignment with what we see as well when it comes to email response times and chat response times. So what we're delivering on social media is very analogous to what we're delivering customers in other channels. So when they choose to take an issue to social media, for instance, they're getting a very similar type of responsiveness that they would see in other channels as well. Second thing I want to highlight, which is a big win, is just like we invest a lot of time and resources in email, phone, chat, etc., being available for customers. We've also done that in social media, where rather than just being solely reactive and only answering comments online that we feel compelled to answer for some very dramatic reason, we're much more proactive in engaging with customers. So we're talking about upwards of 6,000 different comments that come through and engaging in upwards of 4,000 conversations, where on average we're looking at all the different comments that come in, and many of these are again comments from people who are responding to Facebook ads. So there's kind of chatter online as opposed to people coming to us and saying I have an issue, but we're being very proactive, engaging those people nonetheless and having that presence online, and we have approximately 51% response rate. So that's pretty large when you consider the multiplicity of messages and comments that people leave, and the fact that very few of those are actually directed towards us with the intention of the customer getting a response from us. So we want to show customers that we are there proactively to answer their questions and concerns that they may register, even when they perhaps think we're not quite listening to them. I would say a third thing that Megan talked about, establishing good communication across the CX world and the marketing world, et cetera, and also within CX with her team and online engagement and the frontline agents also being crucial, is we have this, used to have a Slack channel and now have a form available where agents can register issues that they encounter, which they believe could result in a social media escalation. So agents use this form to be able to inform Megan's team, hey, I just dealt with this customer and this is a really tricky issue that we're working on, but heads up, this person may go to social media. So Megan's team isn't blindsided if that person does go to social media, and they can jump on that issue quickly. So that form is used all day, every day, with agents submitting potential areas of escalation through that. And it really helps to ensure there's good communication within the CX world as opposed to the CX world and trying to tackle the challenge between the CX world and marketing itself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. mindful of everyone's time, we'll probably make this one the last slide that we'll talk to before we split out into breakouts and Q&A. So just wanted to touch on QA. So of course, at the beginning, we were really mindful of how to QA tickets like calls, chats, emails throughout Zendesk. And like I had mentioned with social kind of living on its own, QA wasn't really a priority at the beginning, and we didn't even know how we would QA social tickets. So it took a little bit of creativity, and we have a full-blown QA program now for how we look at all those social tickets. And I wanted to just open it to Megan briefly to talk more about that. And then we'll head out into breakouts afterwards.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Definitely, like Ben said, we weren't originally QAing social tickets back when I was the only agent. My tickets weren't being QA'd. So when we expanded to start looking at these tickets, I was the QAer simply because I had done online engagement for the longest amount of time, and I sort of had all of this information in my brain and could sort of pick and choose, what areas were really, really good and what areas needed improvement. And over time, we've expanded that into our quality assurance team to make that part of the holistic view of quality assurance. So we started with one analyst who had been doing QA for many, many years. They went through 2 months of training just to understand the importance of what the online engagement agents were doing and what they were doing and how they were doing it. And it was really important for us to have a digestible rubric that someone outside of the online engagement world could digest immediately and understand. So not having all of this marketing jargon that didn't really make any sense to them. And we also utilize proactive QA. So within Conversocial, we have this approval system where we're able to pull 10% of agents' daily messages before they actually post publicly on social media. And the leaders within our space are able to take a look at those and provide in the moment feedback. So either rejecting, approving, or editing that message before it's even published online publicly or via private message. And that's a great way for agents to get in the moment feedback in addition to the quality assurance tickets that they're getting on a weekly basis. And it's also a great way for agents to learn the tone of voice and to test that out and take risks in a very safe space. So when it comes to QA in social media, we utilize a bit of a different rubric from our other contact channels, though again, important for it to be digestible. So some of the things we look for was the agent show ready? So were they chatting in the Freshly tone of voice and representing our brand well? And were they actively creating these wow magical moments or these viral moments, potential viral moments? And then of course, were they navigating these situations with a hint of PR and remaining conversational with the customer, no matter the contact channel. And with that, I'll pass it off to Colin super quickly just to talk about the successes of building this QA program.
Yes, the QA program has had a pretty huge impact on a bunch of different areas. First, having the QA program has enabled us to expand the online engagement team as we have. Megan mentioned early on that her team was a global team because we're utilizing our team abroad in the Philippines, which has been a huge help when it comes to expansion to 24/7 coverage as an example, but also just cost effectiveness when it comes to expanding the team and not giving short shrift to customers on social. And we definitely wouldn't have the confidence to be able to expand responsibilities in social media and other sensitive areas if we didn't have a robust QA program in place where we could be sure not only to have a close eye on those social media related contacts, but also using it as a good training tool to make sure people are appropriately onboarded. So that's been huge in terms of our being able to expand our outreach. Second thing is we're very proud of the fact that our QA scores have improved over time. So they started out in the early 90 percentile and have grown over to 95% plus for the team. And that's with all these different changes going on where we've expanded abroad and incorporated people in a foreign country into the whole process and not seeing any decline in the quality of the conversations that we're having on social media. Third, we similarly see an increase in CSAT, which we measure through Conversocial and the conversations we have in social media, which it can appear low compared to general CSAT for regular contacts. But we've seen improvements from the mid 70 percentile, upwards of 80+%, and now going towards 85%. And again, that may seem low if you're looking at phone chat and email in your organization, but on social media, when you're engaging a lot of people who aren't even customers, and as we know, people can be a little snarky on social media, satisfaction scores usually are low. So getting upwards of 85% of converting some of that snarkiness to happiness is actually quite an achievement. Fourth, and the last thing I'll mention too, is we've seen the sentiment in social media flip, where earlier in 2019, there were more negative comments, more negative sentiment than positive sentiment. And because of the interactions on social media, we've actually seen that flip starting about August 2019, where we see more positive sentiment than we see negative sentiment across social media. So that's also another big win.
Awesome. I guess we're going to throw it back to Greg.
Outstanding. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep, loud and clear.
Awesome. Wow. I you know, as much as I call and text you all day, every day, I learned a lot, and I think I'm definitely going to place an order for the. You said the buffalo chicken is still out, or is that on back order?
You know, buffalo chicken is good, and we'll get you one, Greg. I'll get a special order for you.
Okay. So first and foremost, so you know, as we do our best to make this interactive, I'm going to try something new here. Nalia, would you mind unmuting yourself, possibly, if that's possible? Then maybe a quick fun fact about you, and then maybe you could propose your question.
Sure. I'm sorry I'm off camera.
Awesome.
I have a dog that is insisting on staring me in the face, and so I can barely see the screen. Work from home. Fun fact, I am currently snowed in the mountains of Tahoe. I came up here thinking I would take advantage of work from home and ski for a day, and I am now stuck here. It's been a week. So that's my fun fact this week. My question was around specialization. And I'm going back to the way beginning of your presentation. Thank you for that. It was really, really helpful and insightful. I actually work with a CSM team, and I was curious, one of the debates in the CSM space is, when do you verticalize, and should you? And I'm curious on the support side of things. I know you mentioned you evolved into specializing the teams. How did you make that decision? When did you make that decision? What were the pros and cons? Kind of, if you could walk me through the process you went through, I'd love that.
Yeah, I know I kind of mentioned it, but I think Colin can speak to this the best. He was the decision maker at that time, still is today. And so maybe I'll pass it to Colin.
Yeah, I would say partly it was, as we were growing, partly it was an issue, frankly, of staffing. Because earlier on, of course, as many organizations experience, we had people wearing many hats, even to cover all these different contact channels. So we had less specialization across the board. So, and that's where, like early on, as Ben was mentioning, we had this person who was our first customer service person, period, at Freshly, Joshana, who ended up single-handedly doing social and then passing it on to Megan. And then as volume grows, you say, oh, well, you need someone to help Megan. So then maybe there's this person or that person who can fill different coverage gaps, but you can't use them entirely for social media because you're using them to plug holes in email, phone, and chat, and so forth. So when we started the process gradually, having like a main owner and then incorporating more and more people into the fray based on what we could essentially allow for the remainder of the business. And then we just naturally reached a point, and this was really 2018, so it was about, honestly, a year plus into it easily, where there was enough volume on social for us to be able to justify having more people dedicated to it solely, and for us to be able to do more potentially to move some contacts into the social space by having a greater presence on things like Facebook Messenger, as an example. So it really was a gradual process where we started off having to sort of borrow agents, like the highest skilled agents. And that's how we said really all of our special teams started off with agents who are senior agents who, as part of your perk of being a senior agent, you got to engage with different tasks outside of answering phone calls, web chats, and emails. So that for some people that was social media, for other people that was helping handle situations with carriers, and then naturally the people who excelled in those respective areas were morphed into roles where they were solely in the team. And that took about a year to 2 years, and we justified the official transition when there was enough work to do, where we could justify it as a business need that, yeah, we need to have people fully dedicated to social media if we want to hit our KPIs for response times.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, well then, I think I've got another question for you guys if you're up for it. So when things get really, really busy, how do you prioritize support tickets that come from social channels versus customer requests over, private channels like email, chat, or phone? Is there something different being public versus private?
Great question, Greg. So I can touch on that briefly. Our phone chat and email tickets exist in Zendesk today. We use Zendesk for all of those channels plus SMS and ABC. And we use Conversocial for all of our social messaging. So any public or private messages on social media. And with Conversocial, we set up queue routing. So different types of keywords prioritize a message regardless of if it's public or private to the top. So I guess a very fitting example right now is if a customer were to write on our Facebook or send us a private message using the word COVID-19 or coronavirus, it would be at the very, very top of our queue. That would be a comment or a message that we would want to address immediately to help with any questions or concerns that they might have. But at the same time, if someone were to write, do you guys have meals with turkey? That would be lower in the queue just because the importance of that message is not as high. So that's how we prioritize it within social media. And generally speaking, a private message is higher priority than a public comment just because we're utilizing those private channels, much like a text message or a chat.
That was awesome. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and ask a question just because I'm super curious. In terms of how you found a happy medium, I deal with a lot of these conversations with customers all the time in terms of trying to get into social and what does that mean to have those KPIs or SLAs to aim for? And I know it can vary channel to channel on that, but I guess, how did you find that happy medium of, say, 20 minutes, right? Or do you move things along faster when it's James saying, where is the original pasta bolognese, which is my meal, and where did it go? And I want it back. I'm just saying. How do you prioritize, hey, somebody sent in a DM, and what is our target for SLA's response?
Great question. And definitely that's an awesome meal, and we'll have to put in a good word.
I mean, I've tried the cauliflower. It's pretty good.
But it's not your favorite. So we actually have the benchmark SLAs regardless of if it's a prioritized message or a private message or a public message. And because with Conversocial, we prioritize the messages overall, and we also utilize, they have a play mode, which is much like a chat queuing system or even an email queuing system where the number of agents that are logged in, the messages are split around evenly, so that way everybody's sharing the love and everybody's dealing with messages at the same time. When it was just me handling social, we didn't have a very strong KPI, though we ended up settling on 60 minutes because that was something attainable. or a goal that was attainable for me to hit. And then once the team started jumping in, the response times definitely were around that 60-minute mark at first, just because they were getting used to the system and the creativity that sort of comes along with how do I reply to this public comment. And so over time, we were able to bring that down further and further. And so I believe the first benchmark we set for them was an hour, and then we set 30 minutes. And this year we're leaning towards getting it under 15 minutes, 10 minutes, perhaps 5 minutes at some point, as we get better with prioritizing different messages and different staff to handle different type of comments that are coming in, and just the quickness that sort of comes along with that comfort level.
Cool, thank you.